But what I want you to notice is when we go back to test this movie clip, before I had to be right over this circle to get it to work. But now I can be out here in this seemingly invisible area and still see the ball change. And the reason that is we drew this big square here. This is now the area in which it gets tested or whether a hit gets made. So because of that, we've made our button much larger without our end user having to specifically be over top of the button. So you don't always use the hit area, but sometimes it comes in handy. And also if you have any invisible menus you want to drop down, it comes in handy in that respect a lot also. Okay, so now we're going to look at how we can go ahead and make what looks like a button that goes from blue to green to yellow, but adds some sort of transition to it. Because as we see with this button here, it's blue, immediately goes green, immediately goes yellow. There's no room to have any transition, be it a fade in, be it words coming from the screen. There's no animation, no transition. And that type of thing can really be accomplished by using a movie clip as opposed to a regular button. So we're going to start the same way. What I'm going to go ahead and do here is go back to my scene 1. From scene 1, I'm going to grab my oval tool, draw me another circle out from the other one. That circle I'm going to select and change its color back to a color of blue. I don't really care if it's the same color. It's best to have them distinguished actually, just for educational purposes here. What I'm going to do is group that, like I say, Control G or Apple G if you're using the Mac. Once I have that done, I'm going to go up and convert it to symbol, but this time I'm going to choose movie clip, and I will just call it movie clip. Remember, this name isn't super important to Flash. Once I have that created, I'm going to double click to go inside of the movie clip. Now inside of the movie clip, everything really appears to be just like scene 1. I mean, nothing's really changed. You still have the same timeline up top. It can be a movie inside of a movie. Hence, that's why they call it a movie clip. For our purposes, we're going to be allowed to do some tweens in here. We can do some animation if we want, and we can call it from the actual action script, from the main timeline, and make it move however we want. So what I'm going to do, here on layer 1, I'm going to call this button, just to have some naming, and I'm also going to make a new layer up here, which I'm going to call labels, which is going to come into play here in a moment. I'm going to come out to frame 10 on my buttons, and I'm going to insert a keyframe. This being exactly like what we did when we worked on doing the keyframes for the actual button states. This is also going to be button states for me. So here at frame 10, I'm going to change this grouped circle here to be a green that I want to use. So I'm going to double click to get in the group. From there, I'm going to change it to a green. Like I say, I'm just really going for the same type of effort, not the exact same thing as before. And then I'm going to come out to about frame 20, insert another keyframe, and make that yellow. And that's going to be yellow. So now I have frame 1 being blue, frame 10 being green, frame 20 being yellow. We'll see that if we try to right click and create a shape tween here somewhere between frame 1 and frame 10 of our button, it won't allow it. That's because these things we have on the screen here are not really shapes as it stands. We've grouped them, so they're not just simple shapes. So it kind of sounds backwards, but I do need to go ahead and break these apart or ungroup them. Either way, ungrouping will take us back one level. Breaking apart will take us, if we have multiple groupings, it'll break it all the way down. I'm going to do Apple B or Control B to break it down. I'm going to break down each one of these that I've made. So now I have them all broken down. If I then right click somewhere here between frame 1 and 10, I can create my shape tween. I can also do it between frames 10 and 20. Do that there. So what we see is we're going to have a nice dark blue that goes to a lighter green, which will then go down to our yellow. So it just won't jump blue, green, yellow automatically. Now we need to be able to give Flash some sort of direction as to how to do that. and that's where this labels layer is going to come into play. We'll also want to add another layer here that we'll call actions. That'll be our action scripts that we have here inside of this actual movie clip. It's a good idea to go ahead and separate your actions from your labels from any objects you might have on there, drawn or otherwise. Just makes it easier for other programmers if they ever come in and try to look at your code. So on my labels, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in keyframes in the exact same positions that I currently have the keyframes in that you see now. So I've already got a keyframe here at 1. I want to insert a keyframe at 10. I want to insert another keyframe here at 20. And I'm going to do the same up top for what we see above. So I'm going to go ahead and say that I want to insert a blank keyframe, insert a blank keyframe, to where everything should be as we see here. First, I'll start with the actions. Most importantly, movie clips run by default. If you haven't set them to stop, they keep playing over and over and over again. So I'm going to come into my actions, up on the actions place here on frame 1, and I want to say that I want to put a stop bit in there. I'm also going to come over to frame 10 on the same layer, put another stop bit, and on frame 20 put a stop bit as well. I have stops all along there. That's good for my actions. Down here at the labels, we're actually going to put in a frame label down at the bottom, similar to what we did with our instance name. So here for labels, frame 1, I'm going to come down and say normal. Make sure you hit enter after that. On 10, I'll call it over, and on 20, I'll call it hit. I'm mimicking the same names that we had basically from our button that we did. So I have normal, over, and hit. So now for us, when we look at this, we can see some animation going on in here. So what we've seen here is we can go from the blue to the green to the yellow, and we do see some sort of animation happening. The problem is, unlike our button that we had earlier that you can automatically roll over, and Flash understands as a button and goes ahead and shows you the over state and the hit state, we need to give Flash a little bit more information about this being a movie clip. It doesn't understand as a button. So when we go back to scene 1 and we try to actually test this movie, when I test it, this button works over here correctly. This one does nothing, and that's because it is the movie clip. We need to let Flash specifically know what it needs to do. This is where our action script is going to come into play. So I want to add a new layer on top of this just to keep my actions separate. Inside of here, I'm going to go into actions to bring up my action menu, and this is where we're going to put in our action script that goes along with our movie clip. Also, it's good to note that this is the same place we'd have to put in any different pieces of code that's going to affect our other button as well. It's best to put them on the frame itself, being frame 1 of the actions, as opposed to putting them directly onto the buttons or the movie clips. Makes it much easier when some other programmer comes around and tries to figure out what you've done. It's just more organized. So now when we go and we test the movie clip, this button works the same. This button does not work at all yet, this movie clip. Why is that so? Well, this is one of the biggest debugging problems we can deal with, and that is, somewhere in my process, I type this action script on the wrong object. We can look down here and see it says movie clip 1. I'm accidentally typing this on the object. So I'm going to highlight this text. You all may not have typed this here. It's quite possible you have it the right place, but it does frustrate you a lot and can happen quite often by accident. I'm going to take this code, cut it out of here, put it where it properly goes, which is on my actions layer in frame 1. When I paste that in here and I go back and I control and I test my movie clip, yes, my button that Flash understands works, but also my movie clip, as I roll over it, it fades into green from the blue. If I click it, it then fades to the yellow.